first call came from a veterinarian named Dr. Mara Voss. She ran a small clinic off Old Mile Road, just far enough outside Lantern Bend that most of her patients came in through the side entrance covered in mud up to their knees. I'd met her twice before. Once when I was still a ranger and had to bring in an injured owl somebody found tangled in fishing line. The second was after I quit, when she called me about a doe that kept walking in circles behind the clinic until it wore a trench into the grass. That second case ended with the county taking the carcass before sunrise and telling Mara the animal had a vestibular infection. Mara didn't believe them. That meant when she called my house at 7:18 on a rainy Thursday morning, she didn't start with small talk.
Evan, I have a dog in my quarantine room that keeps staring through the north wall.
I was in the workshop when she called. Rain tapped against the tin roof over the lean-to. The air smelled like wet cedar and machine oil. I set down the socket wrench in my hand. Is this a rabies concern?
I don't know what it is. That's the problem.
What kind of dog?
It's a golden retriever. 6 years old, male, name's Boone. The owner says he's the sweetest thing on 4 legs. But my text had to use a catch pole to get him out of the truck.
Did he bite anyone?
No. That's why I'm calling you.
I looked toward the closed door that led into the house. Lauren was upstairs getting Emma ready for school. I lowered my voice anyway. Walk me through it.
The owner said Boone stopped responding to his name 3 nights ago. He'd stand under the porch eave and stare up at one corner of the roof. No barking, no whining. Just standing there with his nose tilted at the soffit.
The rain on the roof seemed to get louder. Was there anything under the eave?
A wasp nest.
I wrote that down in the Greenfield logbook without knowing why. What happened after that?
The owner tried to knock it down with a push broom yesterday afternoon. Boone turned on him.
Turned on him how?
That's the part I don't like. He didn't growl, bark, or lunge. He walked toward him. Slow, direct, head low. The owner backed across the porch, and Boone kept matching him 1 step at a time. The man said it felt like being herded.
I sat down on the stool by my workbench. What's the dog's temperature?
That's another thing.
Mara went quiet for a moment. I heard a door close on her end. Then the softer sound of her breath moving close to the receiver.
Rectal temperature was 106.4 when he came in. I was thinking heat stroke. So I put him on cooling mats, started fluids, and 20 minutes later, his core dropped to 102, but his skull stayed hot.
His skull?
I know how that sounds.
Did you check with the thermal camera?
Yes.
She swallowed.
His whole head was lit up. White, blown out. Like the image couldn't handle the reading. But his eyes were black. Completely black on thermal. Cold void.
I stopped writing. Mara, where is the dog looking right now?
North wall.
What's north of your clinic?
The supply room, parking lot, and a pine break.
Anything else?
Animal control dropped off a paper bag this morning. It has part of the nest in it.
I closed the logbook. Get everyone out of that room. Don't open the bag or let the dog near it. I'm heading that way.
You think this is one of yours?
I looked at the rain crawling down the workshop window. Beyond it, the blue perimeter stripe around our trees glowed dull and wet. I think the dog isn't what's making me nervous. Rabies doesn't make a dog fix on a nest through drywall. Lauren was in the kitchen when I came through from the workshop. She had Emma's lunchbox open on the counter, and a county records printout folded under her elbow.
That sounded like your field voice.
I grabbed my rain jacket from the peg by the door. It was the vet clinic. Possible rabies cluster, or something else.
How much something else?
A dog got fixated on a wasp nest, and the thermal image was off. Its skull was hot, but its eyes were cold. Lauren's expression changed in the small, controlled way it does when fear arrives and she files it somewhere useful.
Insects?
Maybe.
You hate insects.
I respect insects.
You once spent 40 minutes trying to move a yellow jacket nest out of the woodshed with a garden hose and a rake.
That was tactical respect. She smiled for half a second, then she looked toward the hallway where Emma was humming to herself while tying her shoes.
What do you need?
Anything with aggressive dogs, strange wildlife, wasp removal, bee suits, thermal equipment, or invoices that look like they're hiding any of it.
I can start with the maintenance ledgers and procurement logs.
I kissed her on the cheek and went to leave.
If this is airborne, you come home through the workshop shower, clothes in a contractor bag, in no exceptions.
Yes, ma'am. Emma appeared at the end of the hall with one shoe tied and one lace dragging. She looked at me, then at the rain-dark woods through the kitchen window.
Honey, finish your shoe.
Emma didn't move. She raised one small hand and pointed toward the glass.
What is it?
Emma blinked slowly.
There's bugs in the birds.
Lauren and I looked at each other. Outside the window, a crow sat on the lowest branch of a wet maple just beyond the blue perimeter. Its beak held a piece of bright copper wire. Dr. Voss met me behind the clinic with a paper mask on her face and nitrile gloves pulled over the cuffs of her scrub top. Old Mile Veterinary was a one-story brick building with a metal roof, a gravel lot, and a row of pines behind it that leaned too close to the back fence. Rain dripped off the gutter in steady lines. The air smelled like wet asphalt, disinfectant, and something faintly sweet underneath. Dry clay, old paper, rotting leaves.
You smell it too.
I nodded and opened the tool bag in my passenger seat. I brought a respirator, sealed goggles, leather gloves, and a thermal monocular. Do you have anyone else inside?
One tech at the front desk. I send everybody else home.
Good.
That isn't the word I'd use.
Mara led me through the back entrance, past stainless steel tables and caged cats that watched us with the offended stillness cats reserve for medical settings. The quarantine room sat at the end of a short hallway behind a heavy door with a narrow wire glass window. Boone stood inside. He was a big dog. Red gold coat, gray around the muzzle, broad paws planted square on the rubber floor. A red leash trailed from his collar. He didn't pant. He didn't tremble. He stood facing the north wall with his head slightly lowered. His tail hung motionless behind him. Dogs have a lot of ways to be afraid. They tuck, shake, lick their lips, show the whites of their eyes. Boone did none of that. He looked like a machine, waiting for power.
He hasn't moved in 12 minutes.
I lifted the thermal monocular to my right eye. The room washed into black, gray, and white. Boone's body showed warm and normal under his coat. His paws were cooler against the rubber mat. The fluids line taped to his foreleg glowed faintly where blood moved under shaved skin. His head was wrong. It was almost pure white from the base of the skull to the bridge of the nose. The reading bloomed so hard it wiped out the edges. His eyes were two black ovals set into the white glare. I lowered the monocular. How long was he exposed to the nest?
Owner says he started standing under it on Monday, maybe earlier. He works nights and sleeps during the day.
Any wounds?
One puncture behind the jaw. I thought maybe snake bite, but there's no swelling pattern. The skin around it is dry, almost dusty.
Which side?
Left.
Boone's left side faced away from us. I kept my voice low. What's on the other side of that wall?
Supply room.
Show me the bag. Mara hesitated.
It's sealed in a sample tub now.
You opened it.
Animal control brought it in a lunch sack. I thought it was a normal specimen.
Did anything fly out?
No.
Did you touch it?
With forceps.
Any cuts on your hands?
No.
I looked back through the window. Boone's head turned 5 degrees. Mara saw it too. Her shoulders tightened.
He's tracking us.
No. I kept watching the dog. He's tracking the sample. The supply room was narrow and crowded with shelves. Bandage rolls, syringes, flea medication, cardboard boxes of disposable drapes, and in the back corner, a small refrigerator marked with a red sticker for biological samples. Mara unlocked it with a key from her belt. The sample tub sat alone on the middle shelf. Clear plastic, blue lid, white label. Inside was a piece of nest about the size of my fist. At first glance, it looked like a normal paper wasp nest. Gray layered material, open cells, delicate edges. Then my eyes adjusted to the pattern. Paper nests are layered by instinct. Beautiful in the way instinct can be beautiful, with curves and chambers built by thousands of tiny decisions. This one had structure. The cells weren't random. They spiraled inward around a dense central plug of darker material. Thin strands of copper wire ran through the paper like reinforcement bar in concrete. Bits of aluminum foil flashed under the clinic lights. There were tiny bone chips pressed into the outer layer. Mara whispered through her mask.
Is that metal?
Copper and aluminum.
Why would wasps need metal?
I didn't answer. I angled the thermal monocular toward the tub. The nest fragment was warm. Not room temperature. Not recently handled warmth. It held a low, steady heat at the center, as if a coal had been buried in the gray paper. Something moved under the top layer. Mara stepped back so fast her shoulder hit the metal shelf behind her.
I froze it.
How long?
2 hours.
It wasn't enough. I shut the refrigerator door and sealed the edge with duct tape from my bag,
What are you doing?
buying us time.
From wasps?
Maybe from whatever uses wasps as tools. We left the supply room and went back to the quarantine door. Boone had moved. He stood with his nose pressed against the north wall. A thin, dark line ran from his left eye down through the fur along his muzzle. At first, I thought it was discharge. Then it moved against gravity. Something narrow slid under the skin along the side of his face and vanished behind the jaw.
Oh, God.
Mara reached for the door handle. I caught her wrist before she touched it.
He's suffering.
I know.
We can't just leave him like that.
If you open that door, whatever's inside him gets a choice. She looked at me with wet eyes and anger behind them.
He's someone's dog.
I know. Boone's jaws opened. No sound came out. His tongue moved in his mouth as if something underneath it were testing the shape of the muscles. Then the quarantine room phone rang. The phone was mounted on the wall inside the room. It was an old beige landline for staff to call in during treatments without opening the door. It rang 3 times. Boone turned away from the north wall and looked at it. Mara stared through the wire glass.
That line doesn't ring from outside. It's internal.
The 4th ring sounded flat and too loud. I looked down the hall toward the front desk. Is your tech calling it?
She's up front.
The 5th ring. Boone took 1 step toward the phone. I backed away from the window. The 6th ring ended halfway through. The receiver lifted off its cradle. Boone hadn't touched it. It dangled from the cord and swung gently against the wall. A sound came through the tiny speaker. Not a voice. A dry, papery buzz, pulsing in short bursts. Boone's whole body tightened, his ears flattened, his front paws spread. The muscles along his back rippled in a wave from shoulders to tail.
What's happening?
The sample. I grabbed Mara by the sleeve and pulled her toward the supply room. Behind us, Boone hit the quarantine door. He didn't throw himself at it like a frightened animal. He drove his shoulder into the latch with precise force. Once. Twice. The metal frame flexed. Mara swore under her breath.
Shit!
I reached the supply room and yanked the taped refrigerator door open. The sample tub vibrated on the shelf. Inside the tub, the nest fragment had opened. The cells were splitting along seams too fine to see before. Tiny black hooks worked through the gray paper. A wet, armored shape pushed out of the central plug. It was the length of my thumb. Its body looked like a wasp stripped down for war. Short wings folded flat under a hard shell, wide head, heavy forelegs, a curved abdominal plate like a shield. The stinger was almost as long as the body. It pressed against the inside of the clear plastic tub and turned toward the hallway. Boone hit the door a 3rd time. The latch screamed. I grabbed the tub, dropped it into my metal tool case, and snapped the latches shut. The buzzing stopped. So did Boone. The silence after that felt worse than the impact.
What was that?
I lifted the case carefully. A pilot.
You know that?
No. I looked toward the quarantine room. But I know what it was trying to do. Wade Tolliver arrived at the clinic 20 minutes later in a mud-splattered pickup with 1 headlight and a county road crew sticker on the back window. He was 40, maybe 45, with a rain jacket hanging open over a thermal shirt and fear sitting behind his eyes like a fever. He asked if Boone was dead before he asked anything else.
Is he dead?
He's sedated now.
That ain't what I asked.
Mara kept her voice steady.
No. He's alive.
Wade closed his eyes and breathed out through his nose.
Thank God.
I introduced myself. Wade knew my name. Most people in Lantern Bend do, which isn't always helpful.
You're the ranger that writes things down.
Former ranger.
Same difference when something's wrong in the woods.
I asked him to sit in Mara's office. He wouldn't. He stood near the door with his hands flexing at his sides. Tell me about the nest.
It showed up Sunday.
Showed up.
I mean, I noticed it Sunday. Under the porch roof, near the gutter. About the size of a baseball. I figured I'd missed it growing. I work nights at the county garage, so I don't see the house in daylight much.
When did Boone start acting strange?
Same day.
Wade swallowed.
He stood under it while I slept. I know that now. I checked the porch camera. 8 hours. 8 hours, Evan. That dog stood there 8 hours with his face pointed up at that damn thing.
Did he eat or drink?
No. Didn't answer me either. I clapped, whistled, shook his food bowl. Nothing.
What happened when you tried to remove it?
I got a broom. Figured I'd knock it into a trash bag and be done. I took one swing, didn't even hit it good, and Boone got up.
Wade looked at his hands.
I said his name, and he looked at me like he didn't know what a name was.
Did he charge?
No, I wish he had. That would have made sense. He just came at me slow, like he knew I was going backward.
He herded you.
To the steps, away from the nest.
Any barking?
Not once.
What did you do?
I jumped off the porch rail and ran to the truck. Boone followed me all the way to the passenger door. Didn't bite or bark. Just stood there staring through the glass with his nose touching the window.
Wade wiped both hands down his face.
Then the birds came.
Mara looked at me. Wait. What birds?
Crows. 5 or 6. Maybe more. They landed on the porch rail in the gutters. One of them had a nail in its beak. One had a twist of wire. One had something red I don't want to think about. They walked right past Boone and started pushing things into the nest.
Did they seem sick?
They seemed busy.
I wrote down every detail. Nail, wire, red material, porch eave, dog exposed for 8 hours, coordinated birds. Then he said something that changed the case from strange to dangerous.
This isn't the first one.
I stopped writing. The first nest?
Oh. The first dog.
Mara's eyes narrowed.
My neighbor Carla had her shepherd put down last week.
I didn't treat a shepherd.
She took him to McAvoy over in Pine Hook. Said it was rabies. Dog kept dragging sticks under her deck and biting anyone who tried to pull them out.
Any nest?
Under the deck.
Wade's voice dropped.
And old Vernon Price shot a black bear Tuesday night after it came through his screen door.
I looked up slowly. A bear?
Vernon was spraying a wasp nest under the eave of his smokehouse. Bear came out of the laurel and took the door clean off the hinges. Vernon put 2 rounds in its chest and it kept coming. He had to shoot it through the spine before it stopped moving.
Did the sheriff respond?
DNR did. Fast. Too fast.
I closed the field log. Mara, where do they live?
I can show you.
No. You can give me the address.
That's my dog and my house.
I met his eyes. Wade, if Boone stood under that nest for 8 hours and it changed him, then every minute you spent under it matters too. Wade opened his mouth, then closed it. I saw his right hand move to the side of his neck. Just below his ear was a thin, red scratch he hadn't noticed yet. I called Lauren from the clinic parking lot, while Mara sealed the sample case inside a second container, and Wade sat in his truck, pretending he wasn't shaking. Rain tapped against my windshield. The pines behind the clinic shifted in the wind, dark and wet. 3 crows sat on the fence line with their heads angled toward the building.
I found the paper trail.
Her voice had that tight, clipped rhythm she gets when documents have made her angry. How bad?
Animal Control has logged 9 calls in 11 days involving domestic animals with sudden aggression, fixation on structures, or unexplained fever. 3 were dogs, 2 were goats, 1 was a barn cat, 2 were chickens, and 1 was a horse that walked into the side of a shed until it broke its own neck.
Any mention of nests?
In the public reports, no. In the work order notes, yes. Every property had a wasp or hornet complaint attached within 48 hours.
I watched one crow lift its foot and set it down again. What did the county do?
They marked most of them as suspected rabies and routed them to DNR. Then DNR reclassified them as nuisance pollinator abatement.
Pollinator abatement.
It gets better. County maintenance bought 12 Level B chemical suits, 6 thermal monoculars, and 200 pounds of dry ice pellets yesterday.
Dry ice.
Billed under culvert inspection supplies.
I smiled without humor. Of course it was.
There's also a DNR incident tied to Vernon Price, a black bear. The file says destructive wildlife removal.
Did they take the head?
Yes.
Rabies test.
That's where it gets weird. The rabies submission number exists, but the result was pulled from the state lab portal 93 minutes after upload. I can't see the result. I can see the withdrawal code.
What's the code?
FL review hold.
The letters sat between us over the phone. FL meant flagged land, flagged life, flagged liability, depending on which agency was trying to hide behind it. I'd seen those letters on ranger terrain lists, sealed DNR maps, dispatch memos that disappeared after midnight. The county used FL when ordinary paperwork had stumbled into something old enough to have standing orders. Lauren said my name quietly.
Evan.
I'm here.
The bear necropsy has a separate attachment. I can't open it, but I can see the file name from the audit trail.
Rain crawled down the windshield. Read it.
The file name reads cranial parasite mass, chitinous, amygdala, and brainstem integration.
My hand tightened around the phone.
There's one more thing. The DNR supervisor on the Price case is Raymond Fielder.
Ray Fielder had worked North Fork with me 15 years ago. He was older than me, quieter than me, and better at knowing which locked cabinets had keys taped underneath them. He also owed me for pulling him out of a washed culvert during the flood season of 2012. I looked at the crows again. Send me everything. I'm calling Ray.
Come home if this gets too big.
I will.
I mean before it gets too big.
That was the problem with Lantern Bend. By the time you could measure a thing, it had usually already measured you back. I told Lauren I loved her and ended the call. One of the crows on the fence dropped something from its beak. It hit the gravel with a small metallic tick. A roofing nail. Ray didn't answer the first call. Or the second. And on the third, the line connected, and all I heard was wind. Then Ray said my name like he was disappointed I still had the number.
Whitlock.
Ray.
If this is about Vernon Price's bear, hang up and forget you heard about it.
You know I can't do that.
You can. You're good at quitting things.
That one landed where he wanted it to. I let it sit there. I've got a dog at Mara Voss's clinic with a hot skull, cold eyes, and something moving behind its jaw. I've got a nest fragment in a sealed case trying to call in through a wall. I've got 9 animal control reports and your FL hold on the bear.
You're on speaker?
No,
Wife listening?
no.
Good. Don't say any of that again over a phone.
What is it?
A regional containment problem.
Ray,
You don't have clearance.
neither did I at Tower 7. Didn't stop dispatch from using my pulse rate as bait. The wind on Ray's end dropped for a second. When he spoke again, the bite had gone out of his voice.
Where are you?
Old Mile Vet.
Leave. Now.
I need to understand the dog.
You need to leave before the dog stops being the most dangerous thing in that building.
Is it rabies?
No.
Is it a wasp?
That's like asking if a hand is a man.
I looked toward the clinic door. Mara stood inside the glass with her arms folded tight across her chest. The nest is the colony.
The nest is the visible part. Builders make the structure, and harvesters get into small animals and drive gathering behavior. They bring in twigs, fibers, wire, soft tissue, whatever the colony needs. The things you're calling pilots are defensive caste. They're short range, heavily armored, and built for direct neural attachment.
How do they enter?
They'll use any wet opening they can reach. The eye duct, the nasal passage, the inner ear if the host is sleeping, an open wound if it's close enough to a nerve path. In canines, they prefer the soft tissue behind the jaw. Bears are messier.
What do they do to the host?
They don't eat the brain.
I waited.
They drive it.
Ray's voice was flat now, professional and dead.
They flood it with cortisol and adrenaline and hijack motor control through the brainstem. Pain response is suppressed by overload, not blocked. The host burns hot, fast, and ugly. That's why the skull blooms on thermal. The eyes go cold because blood gets shunted away from tissue the pilot doesn't need.
How did you stop the bear?
We didn't. Vernon got lucky and severed the upper spine. The host died, and the pilot tried to exit through the mouth. One of the techs froze it with CO2 foam.
The words settled in my chest. Tried to exit?
That's the part you need to remember. Killing the host doesn't kill the pilot fast enough.
What does?
Cold works. So does a sealed burn and full saturation foam. Don't smash the nest. Don't spray it from below. Don't stand downwind. Don't let them see a wound.
See a wound.
It could be scent, it could be heat, it could be carbon dioxide. We don't know yet.
There's a man exposed at the dog site. Scratch under his ear.
Keep him out of wind from the nest.
Ray.
Keep him out of wind from the nest.
The line crackled.
And Evan,
Yeah.
if the nest is easy to reach, it's bait.
I should have gone home. That's the honest version. I had enough to make the right call. I had a veterinarian who could quarantine the dog. I had a DNR contact who knew the containment protocol. I had Lauren pulling the paper trail from county systems, which meant the story was real whether I put eyes on the property or not. But a field log has limits. You can write down what people tell you. You can attach photographs, receipts, agency memos, thermal stills, and audio files. You can build a case so tight it should survive any denial a government spokesman can print on letterhead. Sometimes that still isn't enough. Sometimes the difference between rumor and warning is one set of muddy boot prints at the scene. Wade gave me the address. I told him to stay at the clinic. He agreed, which lasted almost 4 minutes. I saw his truck pull out behind me before I reached the main road. I could have stopped. I could have blocked him in. I could have gone back and asked Mara to call a deputy. I didn't. Wade was a grown man whose dog was locked in a quarantine room with something under its skin. He was going back to his house whether I followed him or not. So I followed. Tolliver's place sat at the end of a gravel lane off Old Mile Road, tucked in a hollow where rainwater ran down both banks and gathered in black ditches on either side. The house was small, vinyl-sided, with a sagging porch, a detached smokehouse, and a line of wet hardwoods behind it. The nest was visible from the driveway. That was the first bad sign. It hung under the porch eave beside the gutter, round and gray, about the size of a softball now. Wade had said baseball. In 3 days, it had nearly doubled. The second bad sign was the birds. Crows perched along the roofline, the fence, the smokehouse, and the bare limbs behind the property. There were maybe 20 of them, maybe more. Their feathers were slick with rain, and none of them made a sound. Several held things in their beaks. Some carried wire, some had bark. One held a strip of insulation, and another carried something pale and stringy. They didn't fly away when we got out of our trucks.
Jesus.
Wade's voice came out rough. I pulled the respirator over my face and sealed the goggles against my skin.
Mask. Now.
I don't have one.
I took the spare from my bag and handed it to him.
Put it on. Keep your hood up. Don't touch your neck. Don't stand between the nest and the wind.
That's my house.
Then treat it like a structure fire.
I lifted the thermal monocular. The nest burned warm at the center, a white knot under the eave. The porch boards showed cold and wet. The crows were normal at first glance, small, bright shapes against black branches. Then I saw their heads. Every crow on the roofline had the same white skull bloom. I lowered the monocular and took one slow step backward.
What?
They're infected.
The birds?
All of them.
What does that mean?
It means the nest isn't alone.
Wade looked at the porch. I watched the scratch under his ear pulse red against his wet skin.
We aren't going inside.
I need Boone's medicine.
Boone's at the clinic.
His seizure pills are inside.
The dog isn't having seizures.
You don't know that.
I did know that. Or I knew enough. But Wade had started walking before I could say it. He moved toward the porch with his eyes fixed on the front door. The crows turned their heads together. I caught Wade by the back of his jacket and hauled him away from the steps.
Get off me.
Look at me.
I said get off.
Wade swung at me. It was clumsy and wild. I stepped inside it, hooked one arm under his, and drove him back against his truck. His pupils were huge. He was breathing too fast through the mask. The scratch under his ear had opened. A clear fluid ran from it down his neck. I took duct tape from my pocket and slapped a strip over the wound before he could stop me.
What the hell are you doing?
Keeping it from smelling you.
That cut through whatever fog was gathering behind his eyes. Wade blinked. His knees softened.
I wanted to go in.
I know.
I don't know why.
The nest pulsed under the eave. The crows opened their beaks. A single dry buzz came out of all of them at once. There are sounds the body understands before the mind does. A tree cracking above you in high wind. Ice breaking under your boot. The first low cough of a predator close enough to smell. The buzz that came out of those crows belonged on that list. It wasn't loud. It was a thin, vibrating signal that seemed to land on the bones behind my ears and stay there. Wade put both hands to the sides of his head.
Make it stop! Get in the truck.
The crows lifted from the roof. They didn't scatter. They rose in a tight pattern and angled toward us, wings beating in a rhythm so precise, it looked mechanical. I shoved Wade behind my truck and opened the passenger door.
Get in. What about you? In. Now.
He climbed in. I slammed the door and circled to the driver's side as the first crow hit the windshield. It struck beak first. The glass cracked in a small white star. A second hit the side window. A third landed on the hood and drove its beak into the windshield seal, worrying at the rubber like it knew the weak point. I got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. Wade hunched low in the passenger seat. I hit the horn. The sound blasted across the hollow. The crows froze for less than a second. Then every head turned toward the porch. The nest pulsed again. The crows resumed. That told me two things. The colony could be interrupted. The colony could correct. I shifted into reverse and backed down the driveway. The crows stayed with us. They struck the glass, the mirrors, the roof. One wedged itself under the wiper arm and beat its wings until the whole blade shook. Wade looked over his shoulder and made a sound I still don't like remembering.
Devin.
Boone stood in the road behind us. It was 50 yards back, soaked by rain. Ivy tape still wrapped around one foreleg. He glared through the rear window. Mara had told me he was sedated. The pilot had disagreed. Boone lowered his head and started walking toward the truck.
No.
Wade reached for the door handle. I grabbed his wrist.
Don't open it. That's my dog. If you open that door, he won't be.
Boone came closer. The crows stopped hitting the windshield. Silence dropped into the cab. Wade sobbed once, hard and quiet. Boone stepped onto the gravel behind my truck and sat. He didn't block the road by accident. He sat exactly where my rear tires had to go. The nest under the eave pulsed again. Boone's jaw opened. The sound that came out of him wasn't a bark. It was the same papery buzz from the phone. My father used to say, a broken tool is worse than no tool, because a broken tool lies to you. An infected animal is a broken tool made out of love. That's what makes it hard. Wade saw his dog. The colony saw a door handle, a human hand, an exposed wrist, an open mouth that would say Boone's name and breathe deep at the wrong moment. I saw tire paths. To my left was wet grass. To my right was the ditch. Boone was behind us, the porch was ahead, and the crows were above. The nest was still visible. Visible meant bait. I stopped looking at the nest and started looking for the real one. I lifted the thermal monocular and scanned the house. Porch eave, white knot. Gutter line, cold. Attic vent, warm. I held on the vent. Behind the slatted cover on the east side of the house, the entire attic space glowed with a slow, living heat. The porch nest was a lure. The house was the hive. Wade followed my gaze.
What are you looking at?
Your attic.
I don't use the attic.
Something does.
I turned off the engine.
Why are you turning off the truck?
Listen.
Under the rain, under the ticking engine, under Wade's rough breathing, the house made a sound like dry paper being folded by careful hands. Thousands of careful hands. The attic vent flexed outward. A dark clot pushed through the slats and spilled down the siding. Builder cast. They were larger than normal wasps, long-legged and iridescent, with narrow bodies that flashed oil-slick green under the gray sky. They didn't swarm randomly. They moved in sheets. Lines formed, broke, and reformed along the wall. Each one carried a fleck of material. They carried bark, pulp, wire, gray paper, fragments of pink insulation, even strands of dog hair. Wade made a small choking sound.
Stay low.
I restarted the engine and shifted into drive.
Boone's behind us.
We're not going backward.
I drove forward. Not toward the porch, toward the narrow strip of grass between the smokehouse and the ditch. The truck lurched off the gravel. Mud grabbed the tires. Crows struck the side windows again. The smokehouse wall came close enough to scrape the passenger mirror inward with a crack. Boone moved. He ran beside us, silent, jaws open, feet splashing through the wet grass. Wade kept saying his name under his breath. I didn't tell him to stop. Love is a reflex. You don't fix it by scolding. The ditch dropped away on my left. The truck fishtailed. I corrected. Felt the rear tires slide, then catch. Something hit the roof hard enough to dent it. Not a crow. I glanced up through the rain-streaked windshield and saw a squirrel clinging upside down to the glass. Tiny skull glowing white, black eyes empty. Its jaws worked at the edge of the roof seal. I hit the wipers. The blade caught the squirrel across the body and flung it sideways. I cleared the smokehouse and swung back onto the gravel lane. Boone stopped at the edge of the property. So did the crows. So did the squirrel. They gathered at the invisible boundary where Tolliver's yard met the county ditch and watched us leave. None of them crossed it. That was the third thing the day taught me. The pilots had range. Range meant rules. I drove until the hollow disappeared behind a wall of rain and pine. Then, I pulled onto the shoulder, put the truck in park, and checked Wade's neck. The tape over the scratch had held. The skin around it was hot and angry, but the clear fluid had stopped. His breathing was too fast. His hands shook hard enough that I could hear his wedding ring tapping against the door handle.
Boone got out.
I know.
She said he was sedated.
I know.
He followed us.
Wade looked at me.
How did he know where home was?
I didn't answer. I called Mara. She picked up on the first ring.
Evan, I don't know how you got out.
Are you hurt?
No. The quarantine door's still locked.
That didn't make sense.
The latch is bent, but it's still closed. The room is empty, the phone is off the hook, and there's blood on the floor drain.
Blood.
From the puncture behind his jaw. I think something opened it from inside.
I looked at Wade. Lock the clinic. Get your tech out. If DNR calls, cooperate.
Are they coming?
Yes.
Is Boone there?
I watched Wade close his eyes. Yes.
Is he alive?
I thought about the white skull on thermal, the black eyes, and the careful way Boone had sat behind the tires. I don't know what that word means right now. Mara was quiet.
Evan?
Yeah.
The sample case is humming.
My stomach tightened. Where is it?
Back refrigerator. Sealed like you left it.
Leave it.
It's getting louder.
Leave it and get out.
There's something else.
She drew a breath, and I heard panic crack through the professional layer of her voice.
The cats are looking at it.
I told her to run. If you made it this far, drop Pilot Wasp in the comments below and tell me this. If a dog you loved stood between you and something under your own roof, would you still go back for it? If you want the next field log from Lantern Bend, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Because what DNR found at Wade Tolliver's house was worse than the dog. Stay safe out there. I'll see you in part 2.